The crystal chandelier cast fractured light across the marble floor of the Westmore estate, but Dominic Thorne saw none of its beauty anymore. He sat motionless in his wheelchair, positioned by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the grounds he could no longer walk. 3 months ago, he'd been untouchable, the golden boy of Thorne Industries, engaged to the city's most desired socialite, his body as strong as his ambition. Then came the car crash, the twisted metal, the screaming silence that followed. Now, every morning brought the same question. Would he ever walk again? His fingers gripped the armrests as he watched his physical therapist, the 5th one this month, pack her equipment with barely concealed frustration. Mr. Thorne, if you won't commit to the exercises, I can't help you. Her tone suggested she'd already given up. Then leave, he said flatly. Like everyone else. She did. The door clicked shut, and Dominic released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Through the window's reflection, he caught sight of movement behind him. His fiancée, Cassandra, speaking in hushed tones with his cousin Gregory. Their heads were too close together. Their smiles too familiar. He had noticed these moments before, small fractures in the foundation of his old life. But now he had nothing but time to see them clearly. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the channel where we bring you stories that'll grip your heart and never let go. I see some familiar faces here, and maybe some new ones too. Drop a comment, and let me know where you're watching from. Are you cozy at home? On your lunch break? Wherever you are, I'm grateful you're here. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button ***, because trust me, you won't want to miss where this story goes. This is a tale about betrayal, redemption, and a love that blooms in the darkest of places. It's about a man who lost everything, except the one thing that would save him. Now let me take you into Dominic's world. The accident had happened on a rain-slicked highway, returning from a business meeting in the city. Dominic remembered the truck's headlights, the impossible geometry of the collision, and then, nothing. He'd woken in a hospital bed with his spine intact, but his legs utterly unresponsive. The doctors called it traumatic nerve damage with an uncertain prognosis. His father called it a disaster for the company. Cassandra called it temporary, though her eyes said otherwise. We'll get through this together, she'd whispered in the hospital, her hand cold in his. But together had quickly revealed its true shape. Cassandra still lived in the mansion, still wore his ring, but she drifted through the halls like a ghost counting down days until she could vanish. His father visited once a week, always with reports about board meetings Dominic could no longer attend, always with that pitying look that burned worse than any physical pain. And Gregory, his cousin, his childhood friend, had seamlessly stepped into the role Dominic once occupied, taking meetings, making decisions, slowly erasing him from his own company. The staff treated him with professional courtesy that couldn't hide their discomfort. They spoke around him, about him, but rarely to him. He'd become a fixture in his own home, as immovable and ignored as the furniture. Until she arrived. Dominic heard her before he saw her. A soft humming drifting up from the entrance hall, something melodic and out of place in the cold atmosphere of the Thorne estate. His butler, Harrison, appeared in the doorway of the study where Dominic had been reviewing financial documents his father had forgotten to include him on. Sir, the new hire is here. I didn't authorize a new hire. Mrs. Westmore, your mother, arranged it. A caregiver. Harrison's expression remained neutral, but Dominic caught the emphasis. Not a physical therapist. Not a nurse. A caregiver. Someone to manage the invalid. Send her away. She's traveled quite far, sir. Perhaps you might meet her first? Before Dominic could refuse, footsteps approached, light, confident, unhurried. A woman appeared in the doorway, and something in the study's atmosphere shifted. She was younger than he expected, maybe late 20s, with rich dark skin and eyes that seemed to see straight through his walls. Her hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and she wore simple clothes, but she carried herself with a quiet dignity that made the room feel smaller. She didn't look at him with pity or discomfort. She looked at him like he was a person, not a problem. Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice warm with a subtle accent he couldn't place. I'm Amara Sterling. Your mother hired me to assist with your daily needs. She moved further into the room without waiting for permission, setting down a worn leather bag. I understand you've had difficulty with previous therapists. I don't need assistance. I need privacy. Respectfully, sir, those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Her lips curved slightly. I'm not here to intrude on your life. I'm here to help you. Something about her directness caught him off guard. Everyone else had been handling him with kid gloves, speaking in careful euphemisms. She spoke like his condition was a challenge, not a tragedy. "My mother wastes her money," he said, turning his wheelchair back toward the window. "I've seen enough specialists to know. I'm not a specialist." Amara moved to where he could see her reflection in the glass. "I'm someone who believes you're stronger than you think you are. And I'm very, very patient." In the window's reflection, Dominic saw Gregory pass by the study door, pause, his eyes lingering on Amara with calculated interest before moving on. The look made Dominic's jaw tighten. "Fine," he said curtly. "1 week. Then we'll see." Amara's smile was small but genuine. "1 week is all I need to prove you wrong, Mr. Thorne." Amara Sterling moved through the Westmore estate like water finding its path, quietly, persistently, reshaping everything she touched without fanfare. In her first 3 days, she'd reorganized Dominic's medication schedule, rearranged his study for better wheelchair access, and somehow convinced the kitchen staff to prepare meals with anti-inflammatory properties that actually tasted good. Dominic watched her with growing suspicion. Nobody was this competent, this unbothered by his condition or his reputation. "You're staring again," Amara said without looking up from the book she was reading in the corner of his bedroom. It was early morning, golden light streaming through the curtains she'd opened despite his protests. She'd taken to sitting nearby during his worst hours, the ones where phantom pains screamed through his unresponsive legs and sleep felt impossible. "This is my room. And I'm your caregiver. Which means when you're awake at 4 in the morning, so am I." She turned a page calmly. "Would you like to talk about the nightmares, or shall we continue pretending you don't have them?" Dominic's hands tightened on the blanket. "How did you? You call out sometimes. Not words, just sounds." Her dark eyes finally met his, and there was no judgment in them, only understanding. "It's normal. Trauma doesn't just damage the body, Mr. Thorne. It damages the mind's ability to feel safe." There was something in the way she spoke, a weight of personal experience that made him wonder what nightmares she carried. But before he could ask, his bedroom door swung open. Cassandra stood in the doorway, immaculate in a silk robe that probably cost more than Amara's monthly salary. Her eyes swept over Amara with thinly veiled disdain. "I didn't realize the help was making house calls to your bedroom, darling." "Miss Sterling is doing her job," Dominic said coolly. "At 4 in the morning? How dedicated." Cassandra moved into the room with practiced grace, placing a possessive hand on Dominic's shoulder. Her engagement ring caught the light, 3 carats of diamond that suddenly felt like 3 tons of obligation. "I came to remind you about the board meeting this afternoon. Your father wants you to attend via video call. I'll be there. Gregory will be presenting the quarterly projections. He's done such wonderful work filling in during your recovery." The pause before that last word was deliberate, cruel. "Honestly, I don't know what the company would do without him." Amara stood quietly, gathering her book. "I'll give you privacy. Mr. Thorne, I'll return at 7 to help with your morning routine." As she passed Cassandra, Dominic caught the way his fiancée's nostrils flared slightly, as if offended by Amara's mere proximity. The door closed behind Amara with a soft click. "That one needs to remember her place," Cassandra said, her voice dripping with venom masked as concern. "I've heard she's been quite familiar with you. She's professional. She's the help, Dominic. There's a difference." Cassandra perched on the edge of his bed, her hand trailing down his chest in a gesture that once might have stirred something but now felt performative. "You know, darling, we should talk about our future. The wedding plans are on hold, as you well know." "Yes, but indefinitely? People are starting to talk. They're wondering if—" She trailed off delicately. "If I'm still a worthy investment?" Dominic finished coldly. Color rose in Cassandra's perfect cheeks. "That's not what I meant. Isn't it?" He caught her wrist gently but firmly, removing her hand from his chest. "I see the way you look at Gregory. The way you light up when he enters a room. The way you've been conveniently absent every time I've needed someone. That's not fair. What's not fair is pretending." Dominic's voice was tired rather than angry. "We both know this engagement was more merger than marriage. My accident just exposed the truth faster than either of us expected." Cassandra stood abruptly, her expression shifting from feigned hurt to cold calculation in an instant. "You're right. This was always business. But you need to understand something, Dominic. Business requires leverage. And right now you have none. The board is losing confidence. Your father is losing patience. And I'm losing interest in playing nurse to a man who may never walk again." She swept toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Gregory and I have been talking about the future of Thorn Industries, about what's best for everyone involved. You should consider what that means for you. The door closed behind her with finality. Amara returned at 7 precisely, carrying a tray with breakfast and what looked like a leather-bound journal. She took one look at Dominic's face and set everything down carefully. "She's trying to take everything," he said quietly. "My company, my life, and I'm sitting here useless, watching it happen." "You're not useless." Amara moved to the windows, opening them to let fresh air sweep away the lingering perfume Cassandra had left behind. "You're healing. There's a difference. Healing." He laughed bitterly. 5 therapists have tried. The doctors say my prognosis is uncertain at best. What exactly am I healing toward? Amara turned to face him fully, and something fierce burned in her eyes. "Mr. Thorne, may I be honest with you? Please. Everyone else seems comfortable lying. Your previous therapists failed because they treated your paralysis like a purely physical problem. They pushed your body without understanding your mind." She pulled a chair close, sitting so they were eye level. "Trauma creates pathways in the brain, fear pathways that can actually inhibit healing. Your body may be capable of recovery, but your mind is protecting you from trying because trying means risking failure again. And you know this because?" Amara hesitated, and for the first time, Dominic saw vulnerability flash across her composed features. "Because I've studied extensively in rehabilitation therapy. And because I've seen what happens when people give up on themselves." "You're not just a caregiver." "No," she admitted softly. "I'm not. But I am someone who believes you can walk again, Mr. Thorne. If you're willing to trust me." Something in her voice, absolute conviction wrapped in gentleness, made Dominic want to believe her. It was the first spark of hope he'd felt since the accident, small and fragile, but undeniably real. "What do I need to do?" Amara's smile was radiant. "First, you need to eat. Healing requires fuel. And second," she opened the leather journal, revealing pages filled with detailed notes and exercises. "We start rebuilding. Not just your legs, but everything they took from you." Through the open window, Dominic heard voices from the garden below, Gregory and Cassandra, laughing together, already dividing his kingdom. But for the first time in months, he felt something other than despair. He felt determined. If you're feeling what Dominic's feeling right now, that spark of hope, let me know in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. The inciting incident came on a Tuesday, during what should have been a routine board meeting. Dominic sat in his study, laptop positioned on his desk, watching the video conference with mounting fury. Gregory stood at the head of the boardroom table, his seat, presenting quarterly projections with the confidence of someone who'd already claimed ownership. His father, Richard Thorne, sat to Gregory's right, nodding approvingly at every slide. "As you can see," Gregory said, his voice smooth as expensive bourbon, "we've increased efficiency by 17% since restructuring the management team. The market has responded positively to our more agile leadership." Agile. The word was a knife, and Gregory wielded it expertly. "Some have expressed concern about continuity." One of the board members, Phillips, an old ally of Dominic's, interjected carefully. "Dominic built many of these client relationships personally. And we're grateful for his contributions," Gregory said with practiced sympathy. "But sentiment can't drive a billion-dollar company. We need leadership that can be present, active, and frankly," his eyes found the camera, found Dominic, "mobile. Thorn Industries requires someone who can meet clients face-to-face, attend site visits, represent us at crucial negotiations." The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Richard cleared his throat. Gregory raises valid points. "Dominic, son, we all want you to focus on your recovery. Perhaps stepping back from day-to-day operations would reduce your stress." Stepping back, Dominic's voice was dangerously quiet. "Or being pushed out." "Nobody's pushing anyone," Gregory said smoothly. "We're simply acknowledging reality. The company needs active leadership. You need time to heal. It's not personal, cousin. It's practical. I'll decide what's practical for my company." "Your company?" Gregory's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. "Dominic, you own 38%. Significant, yes. But not controlling. The board has concerns. Your father has concerns. And if you can't even stand up at a meeting..." "That's enough," Richard interjected, but the damage was done. Dominic closed the laptop with barely controlled rage. His hands shook, not from weakness, but from the desire to reach through the screen and show Gregory exactly how much strength he still possessed. Behind him, he heard the door open. Amara's reflection appeared in the dark laptop screen. "I take it the meeting didn't go well," she said quietly. "They're stealing it. Everything I built. And I'm supposed to just accept it." Amara moved around the desk, kneeling so she could look up at him directly. "Then don't accept it. Fight back." "How?" "I can't even." He gestured violently at his legs. "Yet." Amara's voice was firm. "You can't walk yet. But Mr. Thorne, I need you to understand something. Your legs aren't the problem. Your nervous system has the capacity to heal. I've been observing your responses, your reflexes. There's neural activity. Your body wants to recover. We just need to teach it how. 5 therapists. Didn't understand what you needed." She stood, opening her worn leather bag and pulling out what looked like a modified TENS unit, along with several other pieces of equipment he didn't recognize. "I wasn't entirely honest with you before. I'm not just someone who studied rehabilitation therapy. I completed a full program in neuromuscular reeducation. I specialized in cases exactly like yours, trauma-induced paralysis where the spine is intact but the neural pathways are disrupted." Dominic stared at her. "Why didn't you say this before?" "Because you weren't ready to hear it. You were too angry, too convinced of your helplessness. And because..." She hesitated, vulnerability flickering across her face again. "Because I'm not licensed to practice in this state. The program I completed was in Kenya, where I'm from. Here, those credentials mean nothing. I'd need years of additional certification. So you became a caregiver. I became someone who could still help people, even if the system didn't recognize my training." Amara met his eyes steadily. "I took this position because your mother told me about your case. She showed me your medical files. And I knew I could help you. But it meant working unofficially, risking everything if anyone discovered what I was really doing." The weight of what she was offering settled over Dominic. "You could lose your job. Face legal consequences." "Yes. Why would you risk that for a stranger?" Amara's smile was sad and beautiful. "Because I've watched too many people give up when they didn't have to. Because I believe everyone deserves a chance to reclaim their life. And because, Mr. Thorne, you remind me of someone I once knew. Someone who needed help I couldn't give them in time." The grief in her voice told Dominic there was a story there, one carved deep into her heart. But before he could ask, footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Through the partially open door, he saw Cassandra passing by, phone pressed to her ear. "Meeting with the lawyers next week," she was saying, her voice lowered but still audible. "Yes, I'm sure. Gregory says the board will support a vote of no confidence if it comes to that. We just need to time it right." "No, Dominic won't fight it. He can barely fight gravity." Her cruel laugh faded as she moved down the hallway. Amara's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." "Don't be." Something crystallized in Dominic's chest, a clarity born from betrayal, sharpened by rage, and tempered by the first real hope he'd felt in months. "I needed to hear it. I needed to understand exactly what I'm fighting against." He looked at Amara, really looked at her. This woman who'd walked into his life carrying secrets and skills and a determination to save him, asking nothing in return except his willingness to try. "If we do this," he said slowly, "if you help me walk again, and anyone finds out you were practicing without proper credentials, I'll deal with the consequences. That's my choice. Then I have a choice too." Dominic straightened in his wheelchair, feeling something he hadn't felt since the accident: purpose. "Help me walk again, Amara. Help me stand up and face the people trying to destroy me. And I promise you, when this is over, when I take back what's mine, I'll make sure your talents are recognized properly. Licensed, certified, whatever it takes. I'm not doing this for recognition. I know. You're doing it because you care. Which makes you the only person in this entire mansion I can actually trust." He extended his hand. "Partners." Amara looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment, and Dominic saw her weighing the risks, calculating the costs. Then she clasped his hand firmly, her grip warm and strong. "Partners," she agreed. "But I warn you, Mr. Thorne, this won't be easy. The pain will be intense. The progress will be slow. There will be days you want to quit. Then you'll remind me why I can't." He squeezed her hand, feeling the calluses on her palms. Evidence of work, of struggle, of a life he knew nothing about yet. "When do we start?" Amara's smile was fierce and beautiful. "Right now." She moved behind his wheelchair, unlocking the brakes. "First, we get you out of this study. You've been hiding in here for 3 months, watching your life through screens and windows. That ends today. Where are we going? The physical therapy room your mother had built in the East Wing. The one you've been avoiding. Amara began pushing his chair toward the door. You wanted to fight back? Then stop being a spectator in your own life. As they moved through the hallways, Dominic noticed staff members pausing in their tasks, watching with surprised expressions. He realized he hadn't left his study or bedroom in weeks, had become a ghost haunting his own home. They passed the grand staircase where a portrait of him hung, taken 2 years ago at a company gala, standing tall and confident, the world at his feet. The man in that portrait seemed like a stranger now. But maybe, Dominic thought as Amara wheeled him determinately toward the East Wing, maybe that stranger could be reclaimed. Rebuilt. Made stronger for having been broken. In the foyer below, he caught a glimpse of Gregory and Cassandra standing close together, their heads bent in conspiratorial conversation. Gregory's hand rested on the small of Cassandra's back. Too familiar, too intimate. Let them plot, Dominic thought grimly. Let them think they've already won. They had no idea what was coming. The physical therapy room smelled of disinfectant and broken promises. State-of-the-art equipment lined the walls. Parallel bars, resistance machines, therapy tables, all gathering dust like monuments to Dominic's failure. His mother had spared no expense building this space, and he'd rewarded her investment by refusing to enter it for 2 months. Amara wheeled him to the center of the room, then locked his chair's brakes with decisive clicks. Tell me about the pain, she said, moving to stand before him. What? The phantom pain. Where do you feel it? When does it come? Dominic shifted uncomfortably. Discussing his body's betrayals felt too intimate, too vulnerable. It doesn't matter. The doctors said. The doctors aren't here. I am. Amara knelt, her hands hovering near his legs without touching. Pain is information, Mr. Thorne. Your nervous system is trying to communicate. We need to listen. Something about her directness, her refusal to let him hide, made him answer honestly. At night, mostly. It feels like fire running down my thighs into my calves. Like my legs are screaming even though they won't move. Good. That's actually good. How is agony good? Because pain means your nerves are still fighting to connect. The pathways aren't dead. They're confused, misfiring. We can work with that. Amara stood, retrieving the modified TENS unit from her bag. This will feel strange at first. We're going to stimulate the neural pathways while manually moving your muscles through their range of motion. Your brain needs to remember the connection between intention and action. She began attaching electrodes to his legs with clinical efficiency, her touch professional yet somehow gentle. Dominic found himself watching her face as she worked, the concentration in her dark eyes, the way she bit her lower lip slightly when focusing on a precise placement. You said I reminded you of someone, he said quietly. Who? Amara's hands stilled for just a moment. My brother. Kofi. Her voice softened around the name. He was in a motorcycle accident when I was in university. Similar injury to yours. Intact spine, disrupted neural function. The doctors in Nairobi said he'd never walk again. But he did. He did. It took 18 months of intensive therapy, but he walked again. Ran even. Competed in marathons. Pride and pain mingled in her expression. That's why I changed my focus from general medicine to rehabilitation. Because I saw what was possible when someone refused to accept limitations. Where is he now? The light in Amara's eyes dimmed. He died 3 years ago. Not from the injury, from malaria of all things. Something preventable, treatable, if we'd caught it sooner. She resumed attaching the electrodes, her movements more aggressive now, as if she could fight death itself through sheer determination. I came to America thinking I could make a difference here, help people the way I helped him. But credentials don't transfer, and hope doesn't pay rent. So I became the help, as your fiancé so graciously reminded me. The bitterness in her voice was new, raw. Dominic reached out instinctively, catching her wrist. Cassandra is afraid of me, Amara finished, meeting his eyes. She sees what I see, that you're not actually helpless, that you could rise again and reclaim everything. And that terrifies her because her future depends on your failure. Her perception was startling, accurate, and uncomfortably perceptive. She wasn't always like that, Dominic said, though he wasn't sure why he was defending her. When we first got engaged, she was different. Was she? Or were you different? Amara's gaze was penetrating. When you had power, money, mobility, when you were useful to her ambitions, she played her part beautifully. The accident just stripped away the performance. The truth of it stung. He released her wrist, suddenly aware of how long he'd been holding it. Amara activated the TENS unit. Electricity hummed through the electrodes, and Dominic's legs twitched involuntarily. The first movement he'd seen from them in months that wasn't just gravity or someone else manipulating them. "There," Amara breathed, her face lighting up with excitement. "Did you feel that?" "Ah, yes." Tingling. Like something's waking up. Because it is. She increased the intensity slightly, and his quadriceps contracted visibly. "Your muscles remember, Mr. Thorne. We just need to remind them how to listen to your brain again." For the next hour, Amara worked with methodical precision, stimulating different muscle groups while manually guiding his legs through movements, bending, straightening, rotating. She explained everything she was doing, teaching him to visualize the neural pathways rebuilding themselves, encouraging him to focus his intention even when physical response was minimal. The door burst open and Gregory stood in the entrance, Cassandra beside him, both dressed for an afternoon out. His cousin's eyes swept the room with calculated assessment, landing on Amara's hands on Dominic's legs. "Well," Gregory said with false cheer, "this is quite the intimate therapy session." "It's called physical rehabilitation," Dominic said coldly. "You might try looking it up." "Oh, I'm familiar with rehabilitation. I'm just surprised Mother hired someone so." Gregory's pause was deliberate, unconventionally qualified. "Does she even have proper credentials?" Amara straightened, her expression carefully neutral, but Dominic saw the tension in her shoulders. This was the vulnerability he'd promised to protect. "Miss Sterling's qualifications are more than adequate," Dominic said firmly. "Unlike the 5 expensive specialists who accomplished nothing, she's actually getting results." "Results?" Cassandra laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Darling, you're still in that chair. Let's not pretend a few muscle twitches mean anything. They mean more than your concern ever did." Cassandra's perfect face hardened. "Gregory and I came to invite you to dinner with the Haverston clients. They're in town, and it would be good for company morale if you made an appearance. But I can see you're occupied." "The Haverston account is mine," Dominic said sharply. "I built that relationship personally. And Gregory's been maintaining it brilliantly in your absence," Cassandra countered. "They've specifically requested to meet with him. Apparently, they prefer doing business with someone who can actually join them on the golf course." The cruelty was surgical, precise. Dominic felt Amara's hand settle briefly on his shoulder, a small gesture of solidarity that somehow steadied him. "Then by all means go," he said evenly. "Enjoy your dinner. Your golf. Your little fantasy of running my company." Gregory's smile was predatory. "It's not a fantasy, cousin. It's the future. The board meets next month to discuss permanent leadership restructuring. I'd suggest you prepare yourself for the reality of your situation." They left, Cassandra's perfume lingering like toxic residue. Amara's hand remained on Dominic's shoulder. "He's threatened by you. He should be." Dominic looked down at his legs, at the electrodes still humming with electricity, at the evidence of neural activity that hadn't existed weeks ago. "How long until I can stand?" "Honestly? Weeks. Maybe months. The neural reconnection is only the first stage. How long until I can stand long enough to walk into that boardroom and remind them whose company this is?" Amara moved to face him, her expression serious. "If we push too hard, too fast, you could set back your recovery permanently. The body needs time." "I don't have time." Dominic's voice was raw with urgency. "Every day I stay in this chair, they take more. They poison more minds against me. By the time I can walk naturally, there'll be nothing left to walk back to. Then we'll work harder. Longer hours. More intensive therapy." Amara's jaw set with determination that matched his own. "But you need to promise me something, Mr. Thorne. You need to trust me completely. Follow every instruction, even when it hurts. Even when it seems impossible. I promise." Their eyes held, and something shifted between them. A connection deeper than therapist and patient, more profound than employer and employee. In Amara's gaze, Dominic saw a mirror of his own desperation, his own refusal to surrender. She wasn't just helping him walk again. She was fighting her own battle through his recovery, reclaiming her purpose through his healing. "Then let's begin again," Amara said softly. "And this time, we don't stop until you stand." 3 weeks of hell. That's what Amara's therapy sessions became. Every morning at 5, before the rest of the mansion stirred, she would will Dominic to the therapy room. Every morning, his body would scream in protest as she pushed him further than the day before. And every morning he would grit his teeth and endure it because the alternative, remaining helpless while Gregory and Cassandra carved up his life, was unthinkable. But something was happening. Something extraordinary. Dominic could feel his toes now. Not consistently, not always, but in flashes of sensation that felt like victory. He could contract his quadriceps on command, could create small movements in his ankles. The progress was microscopic by medical standards but monumental by theirs. And somewhere between the agony and the breakthroughs, something else had begun growing, something neither of them had planned for. It started with the small things. The way Amara's hand would linger on his shoulder after a particularly difficult session. The way Dominic found himself watching for her arrival each morning, his day not truly beginning until she walked through the door. The way their conversations had evolved from clinical discussions to something deeper. Stories about her childhood in Nairobi, his memories of building Thorn Industries from the ground up, dreams they'd both thought were dead until recently. "Tell me about Kofi," Dominic said one morning as Amara worked on his hamstrings, her strong hands kneading the atrophied muscles. They were alone in the pre-dawn darkness, the only sound the soft hum of equipment and their breathing. Amara smiled, though sadness tinged it. He was brilliant. Reckless, stubborn, infuriating, but brilliant. He wanted to be a photographer, travel the world documenting cultures before they disappeared. The accident happened because he was racing to catch the perfect sunset shot. Her hand stilled on his leg. After he recovered, after he walked again, he said the experience taught him that limitations are just stories we tell ourselves. That the body can do impossible things if the mind refuses to quit. "He sounds like someone I would have liked. He would have liked you too." He had a weakness for stubborn rich men who thought they were invincible. Her teasing smile made Dominic's chest tighten in ways that had nothing to do with physical therapy. "And what about you?" he asked quietly. "Do you have a weakness for stubborn rich men?" Amara's hands resumed their work, but he felt the change in her touch, less clinical, more personal. "I have a weakness for people who refuse to give up, regardless of their tax bracket." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Dominic was acutely aware of her proximity, the warmth of her hands through the thin fabric of his therapy clothes, the way the early morning light caught in her dark eyes. The therapy room door crashed open. Dominic's father strode in, Gregory trailing behind like a shark following blood in the water. Richard Thorne's face was thunderous. "What the hell is this?" He gestured at the equipment, at Amara, at the evidence of secret therapy sessions. "I've been getting reports from the staff about early morning activities in the East Wing. I thought they were exaggerating." Amara stepped back professionally, but Dominic saw the flash of fear in her eyes. This was the confrontation she'd been dreading. Discovery, questions about credentials, potential legal consequences. "Miss Sterling has been helping me with rehabilitation," Dominic said evenly. "I can see that." Richard's gaze swept over Amara with dismissive assessment. "And who authorized this?" "Dr. Morrison explicitly stated you needed rest and professional supervision, not." He waved vaguely at Amara. "Whatever this is. I authorized it. It's my body, my recovery." "Your recovery?" Gregory stepped forward, and there was something vulture-like in his expression. "Dominic, we've been patient. We've given you space. But this is becoming concerning. You're isolated, spending inappropriate amounts of time with staff, clearly not thinking rationally about your situation." "My situation is that I'm getting better." "Are you?" Richard pulled out his phone, swiping to display what looked like financial reports. "Because while you've been playing therapy, the company has been hemorrhaging. The Haverston deal fell through. The Singapore investors pulled out. And the board is 3 votes away from calling an emergency session to discuss permanent restructuring." The words hit like physical blows. "What? The Haverston deal was solid." "It was solid when you were running it," Gregory interjected smoothly. "But they lost confidence when you stopped showing up. When you couldn't meet them face to face. When they realized they were doing business with a company whose leadership was compromised. You sabotaged it." Dominic's voice was deadly quiet. "You deliberately tanked those deals to make me look incompetent." "That's a serious accusation," Richard said sharply. "Gregory has been working tirelessly to keep this company afloat while you've been obsessed with false hope and inappropriate relationships with the help." "Inappropriate?" Dominic's hands gripped his wheelchair armrests. "She's my therapist. She's a caregiver with no legitimate credentials," Gregory said, and the triumph in his voice made Dominic want to strangle him. "I had her background checked. Did you know your miracle worker isn't licensed to practice physical therapy in this country?" that she's been operating illegally, potentially exposing you, and this family, to massive liability. Amara's face went pale. I never claimed to be. You didn't have to claim anything, Gregory continued, moving closer to her like a predator cornering prey. You just had to let a desperate, damaged man believe you could fix him. How much has he been paying you for this little charade? Or were you hoping for something more? His gaze raked over her insultingly. Perhaps a wealthy, vulnerable man would be grateful enough to. Dominic lunged from his wheelchair. The movement was instinctive, powered by rage rather than physical capability. His legs, still weak and uncoordinated, couldn't support him. He crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs and overturned chair, pain exploding through his hip where it struck the ground. But he'd done it. He moved. He tried to stand. The room froze. Amara rushed to his side, but Dominic waved her away, using his arms to push himself into a sitting position. His legs were useless dead weight, his body screaming in protest, but something fierce burned in his chest. Get out, he said, looking up at his father and cousin. Both of you. Get out of my therapy room, out of my wing, and out of my business. Dominic, Richard began. Out. The word came from somewhere primal, a man reclaiming his territory. You want to call a board meeting? Call it. You want to vote on permanent restructuring? Do it. But understand this, I'm not finished. I'm not broken. And I'm sure as hell not giving up without a fight. Gregory's face twisted with contempt. You can barely sit up without help. What kind of fight could you possibly? The kind where I expose everything you've been doing. Dominic's voice was ice. Every sabotaged deal. Every poisoned relationship. Every lie you've told the board about my capabilities. I may be in this chair now, but I'm not stupid, and I'm not blind. I see you, Gregory. I see exactly what you are. Something dangerous flashed in Gregory's eyes, a glimpse of the predator beneath the polished surface. Careful, cousin. Accusations like that require proof. And evidence tends to disappear when the right people are motivated to make it vanish. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. Gregory straightened his jacket, composure restored. The board meeting is in 3 weeks. I suggest you prepare yourself for the outcome. Come along, Uncle Richard. We have actual work to do. They left, and the silence that followed felt suffocating. Amara knelt beside Dominic, her hands gentle as she checked him for injuries. Are you hurt? That was incredibly reckless. I tried to stand. He caught her hands, stopping her examination. Amara, I tried to stand. My legs didn't work, but the intention was there. The connection was there. You could have seriously injured yourself. But I didn't. He squeezed her hands, needing her to understand. Don't you see? A month ago, I couldn't have done that. My body wouldn't have responded at all. But just now, when I needed to protect you, when I needed to show them I'm not helpless, my body tried. It tried. Tears glistened in Amara's eyes. You tried to stand up for me. Of course I did. You're the only person in this entire mansion who's fighting for me instead of against me. He pulled her closer, their faces inches apart, his voice dropping to something raw and honest. You're the only person who sees me as something more than a broken investment or a convenient obstacle. You see me, Amara. The man I was. The man I could be again. Dominic. His name on her lips sounded like a prayer and a warning. They're going to come after you now. Gregory will find ways to discredit you, to drive you away. And my father will support him because that's what he does. He supports winning, regardless of right and wrong. I knew the risks when I started helping you. But you didn't know I'd fall in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, impossible to take back, terrifying in their honesty. Amara's eyes widened, her breath catching. You can't, she began. I can. I have. Dominic's grip on her hands tightened. I know it's complicated. I know I'm engaged, still dealing with Cassandra's betrayal, still broken in ways that go beyond my legs. But somewhere between the pain and the therapy and the 5 a.m. sessions where you refused to let me quit, I stopped seeing you as my caregiver and started seeing you as the woman I want beside me. Not just now, but when I stand again. When I take back my company. When I rebuild my life into something worth living. A tear slipped down Amara's cheek. I'm not supposed to fall for my patience. And yet I did. Her voice broke on the admission. I tell myself it's just proximity, just the intimacy of healing. But then you look at me like I'm the only real thing in this mansion of lies. And I know it's more than that. You're more than that. Dominic pulled her closer, and she came willingly, until her forehead rested against his. They stayed like that, breathing the same air, their hearts hammering in sync. 3 weeks, he murmured. Until the board meeting. Until Gregory tries to take everything. Then we have 3 weeks to get you standing. Amara pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, and the determination in her gaze matched the fierce protectiveness he felt for her. Not just sitting up. Not just trying. Actually standing, walking, showing them you're not defeated. Is that even possible? I don't know. Her honesty was brutal and beautiful. It took my brother 18 months. We have 21 days. But Dominic, if you can find the strength to try standing up to defend me when your body wasn't ready, then maybe, just maybe, we can push this recovery faster than medical science says is possible. He cupped her face with one hand, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. Tell me what to do. We work harder. We push through pain that will make these past weeks seem gentle. And we don't tell anyone, not the staff, not your mother, and definitely not Gregory or Cassandra. They can't know you're improving until you're ready to stand in front of that boardroom and prove them all wrong. What about us? The question was vulnerable, scary. What happens with this? Whatever this is between us. Amara's smile was sad and hopeful at once. That depends on whether you survive the next 3 weeks. Whether I can actually pull off this miracle. Whether you can forgive me if I push you to your absolute breaking point, and it still isn't enough. I'll forgive you anything. As long as you don't give up on me. Never. She kissed his forehead gently, a promise sealed with tenderness. Now, let's get you back in that chair and start planning the impossible. As Amara helped him up, Dominic caught their reflection in the therapy room mirror. A broken man and a woman who refused to let him stay broken, holding each other like lifelines in a storm. Behind the mirror's surface, he could see the doorway where Gregory had stood, where threats had been made and battle lines drawn. 3 weeks until everything changed. 3 weeks to learn to stand. 3 weeks to fall completely, irrevocably in love with the one person he absolutely shouldn't. The woman who just might save his life. 17 days until the board meeting. Dominic collapsed onto the therapy mat, every muscle in his body screaming. Sweat soaked through his shirt, his breathing ragged and desperate. He'd been standing, actually standing, for 43 seconds before his legs gave out. It was progress. It wasn't enough. Again, Amara said, her voice firm but not unkind. I can't. You can. She moved to his side, offering her hands. Dominic, you held your weight for almost a minute. A week ago, it was 15 seconds. You're getting stronger. Stronger isn't walking. Stronger isn't striding into that boardroom and showing them I'm still in control. He slammed his fist against the mat in frustration. Gregory was here yesterday, measuring my office for new furniture. My office, Amara. He's not even waiting for the board vote anymore. He's already moved into my life like I'm already dead. Amara knelt beside him, and he saw the exhaustion in her eyes. She'd been pushing herself as hard as she pushed him. Sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, spending every waking moment researching new techniques, adjusting his therapy protocols, fighting for millimeters of progress. Then we prove him wrong, she said quietly. Come on, one more set. Dominic let her help him into position at the parallel bars. His hands gripped the rails, knuckles white with effort. Amara stood behind him, her hands on his hips, stabilizing, supporting, ready to catch him if he fell. Focus on your core, she instructed. Remember, your legs are just the foundation. Your entire body needs to work together. He pulled himself up, his arms taking most of his weight. But his legs, his goddamn stubborn legs, were responding. Shakily, uncertainly, but responding. He could feel his quadriceps engaging, his calves flexing, his feet pressing into the ground. Good, Amara breathed. Now hold it. Find your center. 30 seconds. His legs began trembling. 45 seconds. Pain shot through his thighs like lightning. 1 minute. His vision started to blur. That's it, Amara said. You can. The therapy room door slammed open. The shock broke Dominic's concentration. His legs buckled, and he would have crashed to the floor if Amara hadn't caught him, her body pressed against his back, her arms wrapped around his torso. Cassandra stood in the doorway, and the expression on her face was pure venom. How touching, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. I came to discuss our engagement, but I can see you're far too busy playing house with the help. Amara helped Dominic back into his wheelchair, her movements professional despite the compromising position Cassandra had found them in. But Dominic saw the flush on her cheeks, the way she couldn't quite meet his eyes. We're in the middle of therapy, Dominic said coldly. Unless you're here to actually be supportive, Cassandra, you can leave. Oh, I'm being very supportive. Supportive of your recovery, supportive of this family's reputation, supportive of making sure everyone understands appropriate boundaries. Cassandra moved into the room like a queen surveying her domain. You do understand boundaries, don't you, Miss Sterling? Or has my fiancé's desperation made you forget your place? That's enough, Dominic snapped. Is it? Cassandra's perfectly manicured hand reached out, trailing along the parallel bars. Because from where I'm standing, this looks wildly inappropriate. A hired caregiver, alone with a vulnerable man, in increasingly intimate positions. One might wonder what exactly you're hoping to gain from this arrangement. Amara's jaw tightened, but she remained silent, and Dominic hated that she had to endure this. Hated that his broken body and complicated life had put her in this position. What I'm gaining, Dominic said, his voice dangerously quiet, is my life back. Which is more than I can say for what you've been doing with Gregory. Cassandra's eyes flashed. Careful, darling. Why? What are you going to do? Break our engagement? Please, Cassandra, do us both a favor. He wheeled closer to her, meeting her gaze head-on. We both know this relationship ended the moment I couldn't walk. You've just been too calculating to make it official. Probably waiting to see if Gregory successfully takes the company before you decide which thorn to attach yourself to. Color rose in Cassandra's cheeks, not shame but rage. You arrogant. Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed for you? The opportunities I've turned down, the life I've put on hold, the pity I've endured from everyone we know. Sacrificed? You've been parading around with my cousin while I've been in this chair. Because you gave up. The words exploded from Cassandra with surprising venom. You gave up, Dominic. You retreated into your study, into your self-pity, and expected everyone to just wait around while you decided whether life was worth living. Well, I'm 29 years old, and I'm not going to waste my youth on a man who won't fight for himself. The accusation hung in the air, and Dominic felt its truth like a blade. He had given up, at least initially, had let despair consume him while the world moved on. You're right, he said quietly. I did give up. For a while. But not anymore. Oh, please. Cassandra laughed bitterly. You think a few therapy sessions with your devoted little caregiver means you're fixed? Dominic, you can barely stand for a minute. The board meeting is in 2.5 weeks. Even if by some miracle you can walk by then, which you can't, it won't matter. Gregory has the votes. Your father has lost faith. And I. She paused, something complicated flickering across her face. I've moved on. Then make it official. Dominic pulled the engagement ring from his pocket. He'd been carrying it for days, waiting for this moment. Take your ring, take Gregory, take whatever future you've been planning. But understand this, Cassandra. When I walk into that boardroom, when I take back what's mine, you're going to regret choosing the wrong side. Cassandra stared at the ring, and for just a moment, Dominic saw something that might have been regret. Then her mask slipped back into place. She plucked the ring from his palm with 2 fingers, as if it might contaminate her. Keep telling yourself that, Dominic. Keep believing your miracle worker can fix you. She glanced at Amara with undisguised contempt. But we both know how this ends. You alone in this chair. Her, unemployed and possibly facing charges for practicing without credentials. And Gregory and me, running Thorn Industries into the profitable future it deserves. She turned to leave, pausing at the door. Oh, and I'd be careful, Miss Sterling. Gregory has been asking questions about you. Your background, your credentials, your immigration status. He's very thorough when he wants to eliminate obstacles. I'd hate to see you deported back to Kenya before you can witness Dominic's inevitable failure. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a death knell. Silence filled the therapy room, heavy and suffocating. Dominic looked at Amara and saw fear in her eyes for the first time since they'd met. She's bluffing, he said, trying to sound confident. Gregory can't. He can. Amara's voice was hollow. My work visa is tied to my employment. If he reports me for practicing therapy without proper credentials, I could lose everything. Not just this job, but my right to stay in this country. Then we'll fight it. I'll hire lawyers. With what power? Dominic, you can barely stand. In 17 days, Gregory takes your company. What leverage will you have then? The reality of their situation crashed over him like a wave. He'd been so focused on his physical recovery on the board meeting that he hadn't fully considered the vulnerability of Amara's position. She'd risked everything to help him, and now that risk was becoming real. I'm sorry, he said, the words inadequate. God, Amara, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to. Don't. She moved to him, cupping his face in her hands. Don't apologize for giving me purpose again. Don't apologize for letting me help someone who wanted to be helped. And don't apologize for making me fall in love with you. His heart stuttered. Amara, I know it's complicated. I know the timing is impossible. I know I'm the help and you're the billionaire heir, and there are about 17 different reasons this can never work. Tears glistened in her eyes, but her voice remained steady. But I also know that these past weeks, watching you fight to reclaim your life, have been the most meaningful of mine. Whatever happens, board meeting, deportation, Gregory's threats, I don't regret this. Dominic pulled her down into his lap, his arms wrapping around her waist. She came willingly, burying her face in his neck, and he felt her tears hot against his skin. We have 17 days, he murmured into her hair. 17 days to make me strong enough to stand, to fight, to protect both of us from what they're trying to do. It might not be enough time. Then we make it enough. He pulled back, meeting her eyes with fierce determination. Amara, you said your brother learned that limitations are just stories we tell ourselves. So let's stop telling that story. Let's write a new one, where the broken man learns to walk, where he saves the woman who saved him first, where love and loyalty defeat greed and betrayal. A small smile broke through her tears. That's quite a story. Then help me write it. Push me harder. Make me hurt more. Break me down completely if you have to, because the only way I can put us both back together is by becoming strong enough to stand on my own. Amara kissed him then, soft and fierce and desperate all at once. It was their first real kiss, and it tasted like salt tears and impossible promises. When they broke apart, her expression had transformed into something fierce and determined. All right, she said. No more holding back. No more caution. We have 17 days to accomplish the impossible. Then let's get started. She helped him back to the parallel bars, and this time when he gripped the rails, something had changed. The desperation had crystallized into determination. The fear had transformed into fury. He would stand. He would walk. He would fight. And he would protect the woman he loved, or die trying. 10 days until the board meeting. Dominic stood. Not for seconds this time. Not for a minute. He stood at the parallel bars, his legs trembling but holding, sweat pouring down his face, and he stood for 3 full minutes before Amara finally made him sit. Enough, she said, but her voice was thick with emotion. Dominic, that was incredible. It's not walking. He was breathing hard, every muscle screaming. Standing is one thing. Walking into that boardroom is another. Then we work on walking. Amara knelt before him, her hands on his knees. Tomorrow we try steps. Real steps, not just standing in place. Tomorrow came fast. At 4 in the morning, before even the kitchen staff awoke, Amara helped Dominic to the parallel bars. His hands gripped the rails, his body familiar with the position now. But this time she positioned herself at the far end. Walk to me, she said simply. Amara. Walk to me, Dominic. 1 step. Just 1. He pulled himself up, finding his balance. His legs shook but held. Then, with every ounce of will he possessed, he shifted his weight to his right leg and dragged his left foot forward. 6 inches. It was pathetic, clumsy, more of a shuffle than a step. It was everything. Again, Amara said, her eyes shining. Right foot. Left foot. Right. Left. Each movement was agony. Each step a negotiation between intention and ability. But he moved. He walked. 5 steps down the parallel bars before his legs gave out and Amara caught him. They held each other, both shaking, both crying. You did it, she whispered against his chest. You actually did it. We did it. He tilted her face up, kissing her with all the gratitude and love and desperation he felt. Amara, we're going to make this work. We're going to. The therapy room door opened. But it wasn't Cassandra this time, or Gregory, or his father. It was his mother. Margaret Thorne stood in the doorway, elegant even in a dressing gown, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. Her eyes moved from Dominic standing at the parallel bars to Amara in his arms to the equipment scattered around the room. So this is what you've been hiding, she said quietly. Dominic and Amara separated quickly, but the damage was done. His mother had seen everything. The intimate embrace, the progress he'd kept secret, the relationship that had bloomed between therapist and patient. Mother, don't. Margaret raised a hand, moving into the room with measured steps. She circled them slowly, her expression unreadable. How long? 3 weeks, Dominic admitted. Since Amara started real therapy. And you didn't tell me because I couldn't risk Gregory finding out. If he knew I was improving, he'd find a way to sabotage it. Or hurt Amara. Dominic's voice hardened. He's already threatening her immigration status, trying to get her deported. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Is he now? She turned to Amara, studying her with sharp intelligence. Miss Sterling. Amara, may I see your credentials? Amara's face went pale, but she met Margaret's gaze steadily. I completed a rehabilitation therapy program in Kenya. It's not recognized here. I've been working without proper American certification. I see. Margaret was silent for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. My son is standing. After 5 failed therapists, after months of despair, he's standing. That tells me everything I need to know about your capabilities. Credentials be damned. Mother, Dominic began. Let me finish. Margaret moved to him, cupping his face with maternal affection he hadn't felt in months. I hired Amara because I saw something in her file, determination, intelligence, and a specialization in cases like yours. I suspected she might bend the rules to help you. I hoped she would. Dominic stared. You knew. I'm your mother. I know everything that happens in this house. Margaret's expression hardened. Including Gregory's machinations. Including Cassandra's betrayal. Including your father's spineless capitulation to Gregory's ambitions. She turned back to Amara. How much time does he need before he can walk unassisted? Honestly? Weeks still. His progress has been extraordinary, but the neural pathways are still rebuilding. 10 days isn't enough for. 10 days is what we have. Margaret's voice was steel wrapped in silk. The board meeting cannot be postponed. Gregory has the votes lined up. Richard has been convinced that permanent restructuring is necessary. If Dominic doesn't walk into that boardroom and prove his capability, we lose everything. Then I'll use a cane, Dominic said. Walking aids, whatever it takes. As long as I'm on my feet. No. Margaret's tone brooked no argument. You walk in unassisted, or you don't walk in at all. The board needs to see strength, not dependence. They need to see the man who built this company, not a damaged heir clinging to past glory. The words were harsh but honest. Dominic felt them settle in his chest like stones. Mrs. Thorne, Amara said carefully, what you're asking might be medically impossible. Then make it medically improbable. Margaret fixed Amara with an intense stare. I'm not a fool, dear. I see the way you look at my son. I see the way he looks at you. You're not doing this just for employment or credentials or even redemption. You're doing this because you love him. Amara's breath caught, but she didn't deny it. Good, Margaret continued. Because love makes people capable of extraordinary things. My son needs extraordinary right now. He needs someone who won't accept limitations, who'll push him past what's reasonable or safe or medically advised. She paused. He needs you to help him walk into that boardroom in 10 days. Can you do that? The question hung in the air, impossible and essential. Amara looked at Dominic, and he saw the war in her eyes. The therapist who knew the risks versus the woman who loved him enough to take them. Yes, she finally said. But it's going to hurt. Really hurt. Pain is temporary, Dominic said. Losing everything is permanent. Margaret nodded approvingly. Then I'll run interference. Keep Gregory and Cassandra away from this wing. Ensure you have privacy for your sessions. And Amara, she placed a gentle hand on the younger woman's shoulder. When this is over, when my son has reclaimed his company, we'll address your credential situation properly. I have contacts at the medical licensing board. We'll find a way. Thank you, Amara whispered. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when he walks. Margaret moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. And Dominic? That girl is worth 10 Cassandras. Don't let her go. She left, and the silence that followed felt different, less suffocating, more purposeful. Dominic looked at Amara. 10 days. 10 days, she agreed. Starting now. No sleep, no breaks, nothing but work until you can walk across this room without support. And then you walk into that boardroom and show them all who you really are. Amara moved back to the parallel bars, her expression fierce and beautiful. Not a broken heir, not a failure, but a man who refused to stay down. Dominic pulled himself up, his legs shaking but holding. Let's write that impossible story. Let's, Amara said. Together. 3 days until the board meeting. Dominic took his first unassisted steps across the therapy room at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. 7 steps before his legs buckled. Amara caught him, and they both collapsed to the floor in an exhausted heap. 7, she breathed, her face pressed against his chest. That's 3 more than yesterday. It's not enough. Dominic's voice was ragged. His body was a map of pain, every muscle screaming, every nerve firing distress signals. They'd been working for 18 hours straight, pausing only for water and the bare minimum of food. The boardroom is 40 feet from the door to my seat. That's at least 30 steps. Then we rest for 2 hours and try again. Amara pulled back, and he saw the exhaustion carved into her beautiful face. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her usually perfect posture was wilted. She'd been pushing herself as hard as she pushed him, sleeping maybe 10 hours in the past week. You need real sleep, he said, brushing a thumb across her cheek. So do you. I'll sleep when I have my company back. He tried to stand on his own, but his legs refused. The frustration burned like acid in his throat. Damn it, Dominic, stop. Amara caught his hands. You're exhausted. Your body needs recovery time, or you'll injure yourself permanently. 2 hours of sleep, then we continue. That's not negotiable. She was right, and he hated it. But as she helped him to the recovery mat, as she settled beside him with her head on his shoulder, Dominic felt something shift in his chest. What happens after? He asked quietly. After the board meeting, after I take back the company, what happens with us? Amara was silent for so long he thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, I don't know. I'm still the help. You're still the heir to a billion-dollar empire. Your mother may be supportive, but the rest of the world will see me as the woman I love. He tilted her face up, meeting her eyes in the dim therapy room light. As the woman who saved my life. As my partner. If they can't see that, they can go to hell. It's not that simple. Why not? His voice was fierce. I've spent my whole life doing what was expected. Marrying the right woman. Building the right empire. Playing the perfect heir. And where did it get me? Engaged to a woman who couldn't wait to betray me. Surrounded by family who'd rather see me fail than succeed on my own terms. Broken and alone except for you. Tears glistened in Amara's eyes. Dominic, I love you, he said simply. I don't care that it's fast or complicated or socially inappropriate. I love you, Amara Sterling. And when I walk into that boardroom, when I take back what's mine, I want everyone to know that you're the reason I'm still standing. She kissed him then, soft and desperate, and filled with everything they'd been too afraid to say. When they broke apart, her smile was watery but genuine. Then let's make sure you can walk far enough to claim what's yours. They slept for exactly 2 hours, then started again. The day of the board meeting arrived with cruel sunshine and Dominic's legs feeling like lead. He'd managed 15 steps unassisted yesterday. 20 this morning at 5 a.m. But 30? 30 steps without visible struggle, without obvious pain, without showing any weakness? It felt impossible. You can do this, Amara said, helping him into his suit. They were in his bedroom, the entire mansion still quiet. The board meeting started at 10 a.m. It was now 7:30. What if I fall? The fear was raw, vulnerable. What if I make it halfway across that room and just collapse? In front of the board, the investors, Gregory's smug face. Then I'll be there to catch you. Amara straightened his tie with steady hands. I've arranged with your mother to be present as your medical consultant. If you stumble, if you need support, I'm there. But Dominic, she gripped his shoulders, you won't fall. Your body is ready. Your mind is ready. You just have to trust yourself. At 9:45, they arrived at Thorn Industries headquarters. Dominic had insisted on his wheelchair for the elevator and hallways. No point exhausting himself before the crucial moment. Staff members stared as he rolled past, Amara walking beside him with professional composure that hid the terror he knew she felt. Gregory was waiting outside the boardroom, Cassandra at his side like a trophy. His cousin's smile was vulpine. Dominic. How unexpected. We thought you'd attend via video call again. Gregory's eyes flicked to the wheelchair with barely concealed satisfaction. The board has been very understanding about your limitations. How generous of them, Dominic said flatly. And you brought your caregiver. How touching. Cassandra's smile was poison. Though I'm not sure what medical assistance she'll provide, given her lack of actual credentials. Amara's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. Shall we go in? Gregory moved to the boardroom door. The board is waiting. They have a very important vote to conduct. The boardroom was exactly as Dominic remembered. Massive mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he'd helped build. 15 board members sat around the table, his father at the head. Richard Thorne's face was carefully neutral, but Dominic caught the flash of something. Surprise? Hope, when he rolled through the door. Dominic, Richard said. We didn't expect you to attend in person. Wouldn't miss it. Dominic positioned his wheelchair near the door, exactly 40 feet from his seat at the table, just as he'd calculated. I understand there's a vote scheduled regarding company leadership. There is. Gregory moved to stand beside Richard, already claiming the position he'd coveted. Given your continued incapacity, the board feels it's time to make permanent leadership arrangements. Permanent. Dominic's voice was ice. Based on temporary circumstances. It's been 4 months, one board member, Phillips, said gently. Dominic, no one doubts your capabilities before the accident. But the company needs active leadership. Leadership that can be present, mobile. Leadership that can stand on its own 2 feet? Dominic finished. He looked at Amara, who gave him the smallest nod. You're right. The company deserves leadership that isn't broken. That isn't limited. That can face challenges head-on. He gripped the wheelchair's armrests. Which is why, he continued, I'm going to walk to my seat. No assistance. No aides. Just me, proving that written-off investments can still pay dividends. Gregory's face went pale. Dominic, don't be ridiculous. Scared, cousin? Dominic pulled himself up, his legs trembling but holding. Afraid I might actually be stronger than you thought? The room fell silent. Dominic took his first step. His right leg moved forward, clumsy but deliberate. Then his left. The pain was extraordinary, every nerve screaming, every muscle burning. But he moved. Right. Left. Right. Left. 10 steps. His legs were shaking visibly now. 15 steps. Sweat poured down his face. 20 steps. Halfway there. Gregory's expression had shifted from smug confidence to dawning horror. 25 steps. So close. His vision started to blur at the edges. 30 steps. He could reach his chair now, could touch it. His left leg buckled. Time slowed. Dominic felt himself falling, felt 4 months of work about to shatter against the boardroom floor. Felt failure rising up to claim him after all. Then Amara was there. She'd moved so fast he hadn't seen her, catching his elbow with gentle strength, steadying him without making it obvious to the board. Her touch was brief, professional, but it gave him the moment he needed to lock his legs again. Thank you, Miss Sterling, he said clearly for everyone to hear. I've got it from here. He took the final 3 steps alone and sank into his chair with as much dignity as he could muster. The boardroom erupted. Board members were talking over each other, some standing, others staring in shock. His father's face showed naked relief and pride. And Gregory looked like he'd been punched in the gut. That was remarkable, Phillips said, his voice thick with emotion. Dominic, we had no idea you'd progressed so far. Because no one asked, Dominic cut in. You all assumed my accident meant permanent disability. You assumed I'd given up. You assumed wrong. He looked directly at Gregory. Motion to table the leadership restructuring vote. Do I have a second? Seconded, Phillips said immediately. All in favor? 13 hands rose. Only Gregory and one of his allies abstained. Motion passes. Dominic leaned back in his chair, every muscle in his body screaming. But he'd done it. He'd walked. He'd proven himself. Now, let's discuss how certain members of this board have been sabotaging company deals to make me look incompetent. Gregory's face went from pale to crimson. That's slander. It's documentation. Dominic pulled out a folder Amara had been carrying, sliding it across the table. The Haverston deal. The Singapore investors. Every relationship I built that mysteriously fell apart during my recovery. I've been doing my homework, Gregory. Turns out, when you're stuck in a wheelchair, you have plenty of time to review email chains and phone records. The blood drained from Gregory's face as board members began reading the documents. This is... Phillips trailed off, his expression darkening. Gregory, did you deliberately tank the Haverston account? I was protecting the company. You were protecting your ambitions, Richard said quietly, and the disappointment in his voice was crushing. Gregory, I trusted you. We all did. Cassandra had gone very still beside Gregory, clearly calculating her exit strategy. I moved that Gregory Thorne be removed from his interim leadership position, Dominic said. Effective immediately. This time, all 15 hands rose. Even his father's. Gregory stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. This isn't over. Yes, Dominic said calmly. It is. As Gregory and Cassandra fled the boardroom, as the board members began discussing next steps and company strategy, Dominic felt Amara's hand settle briefly on his shoulder. He'd done it. He'd walked. He'd won. But the real victory wasn't the company or the board vote or even watching Gregory's defeat. The real victory was the woman standing beside him, her eyes shining with pride and love. Everything else was just details. 6 months later, Dominic stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, the real one, the corner suite he'd reclaimed, watching the city lights flicker to life as evening settled over the skyline. No wheelchair. No cane. Just him, standing on his own 2 feet, exactly as Amara had promised. Behind him, he heard the office door open, followed by familiar footsteps. "You're still here," Amara said, her voice carrying that mix of affection and exasperation he'd come to love. "Dominic, it's 8 p.m. We had dinner reservations at 7:30. He turned, and his breath still caught at the sight of her. She wore a deep blue dress that brought out the warmth in her dark skin, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in her practical bun. But what really made her beautiful was the confidence she carried now. No longer the hidden caregiver, but Dr. Amara Sterling, Director of Rehabilitation Services at Thorne Medical Center. "I know," he said, moving toward her without hesitation, without pain. "I was just finishing the approval for the new research wing, the one focused on neuromuscular rehabilitation." Amara's eyes softened. "You didn't have to name it after Kofi." "Yes, I did." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist. "He taught you that limitations are just stories. And you taught me. The Sterling Kofi Research Wing will help other people rewrite their stories too." She kissed him gently, and even after 6 months, the touch still sent electricity through his veins. "You're going to make me cry, and I'm wearing makeup. Then let's get to dinner before I ruin it completely." They took the private elevator down, Dominic's hand never leaving the small of Amara's back. The building's evening staff had grown accustomed to seeing them together, had stopped treating Amara like help and started treating her like what she was. The woman who'd saved their CEO's life and claimed his heart in the process. The restaurant was intimate, expensive, the kind of place Dominic used to take Cassandra for appearances. But tonight felt different. Real. "Tell me about your day," he said once they were seated, their hands intertwined across the table. Amara's face lit up. "We had a breakthrough with the Patterson case. The teenager who was told he'd never walk after his diving accident. He took 12 unassisted steps today." Her voice caught slightly. "His mother cried. His father kept thanking me, and I just kept thinking, this is what I was meant to do. Not hide my skills, not pretend to be less than I am, but actually help people." "You're extraordinary," Dominic said simply. Says the man who walked into a boardroom and reclaimed his empire. She squeezed his hand. "Speaking of which, how did the Singapore deal close?" "Perfectly. Turns out, when you're honest about your recovery instead of hiding it, people respect your strength." He paused. Phillips called it the most inspiring comeback story he's seen in 40 years of business. "And Gregory?" The name no longer carried the sting it once did. "Last I heard, he took a position with a startup in California, far away from family expectations and the wreckage of his reputation." Dominic shook his head. "I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. And Cassandra? Engaged to a hedge fund manager. I saw the announcement last week." He met Amara's eyes. "I felt nothing. No anger, no regret. Just relief that I dodged that bullet." Their food arrived, but neither of them moved to eat immediately. The air between them felt charged with something unspoken. "Amara," Dominic began, his voice suddenly uncertain in a way that made her look up sharply. "These past 6 months have been the best of my life. Not just because I can walk again, or because I saved the company, but because of you. Because every morning I wake up knowing you're in my life. Because every challenge feels manageable when you're beside me." "Dominic, let me finish." He stood, and for a moment panic flashed across Amara's face. Then he moved around the table, and her hand flew to her mouth as he lowered himself to one knee. The restaurant went quiet around them. "6 months ago, I was broken," Dominic said, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. "Not just my legs, but my spirit, my hope, my belief that life could be anything but pain and betrayal. Then you walked into my study and refused to let me stay broken. You pushed me. You challenged me. You loved me when I couldn't love myself." Tears streamed down Amara's face as he opened the box, revealing a ring, not ostentatious like Cassandra's had been, but elegant and meaningful. A deep blue sapphire surrounded by small diamonds that caught the light like stars. "Amara Sterling, you taught me that limitations are just stories. So let's write a new one together. A story about two people who refuse to give up, on themselves, on each other, on the impossible. His voice cracked slightly. Marry me. Not because you're my therapist or because I'm your patient, but because I love you with everything I am, everything I've become, and everything I'll ever be. The restaurant held its breath. Amara slid from her chair to kneel with him, cupping his face in her hands. You stubborn, impossible, beautiful man, she whispered. Yes. 1,000 times yes. The restaurant erupted in applause as Dominic slipped the ring onto her finger, as they kissed like they were the only two people in the world. And in that moment they were two broken souls who'd found each other and built something stronger than either had been alone. 1 year later, the Thorne Estates gardens had been transformed for the wedding. White flowers everywhere, chairs arranged in perfect rows, string lights overhead creating a canopy of stars even though it was barely afternoon. Dominic stood at the altar, his mother beside him, watching as guests filled the seats. His father sat in the front row, pride evident on his face. Phillips and several board members occupied the section reserved for colleagues who'd become friends. And scattered throughout were Amara's family, her mother and siblings who'd flown in from Kenya, her friends from medical school, and colleagues from the rehabilitation center. Two families, two worlds coming together. Then the music started, and Dominic forgot to breathe. Amara appeared at the end of the aisle, radiant in a dress that somehow managed to honor both her Kenyan heritage and Western traditions. But what made her truly beautiful was the joy on her face, pure, unguarded happiness. She walked toward him not as a caregiver approaching a patient, but as an equal meeting her partner. When she reached the altar, Dominic took her hands and felt complete in a way he'd never experienced before. Dearly beloved, the officiant began, but Dominic barely heard the words. He was too focused on Amara's eyes, on the way she was looking at him like he'd hung the moon. When it came time for vows, Dominic spoke from his heart. Amara, you once told me that I reminded you of someone who needed help you couldn't give them in time. But what you didn't realize was that I reminded you of yourself. Someone fighting to reclaim their purpose, their identity, their right to be extraordinary. He squeezed her hands. You saved me, but I think maybe I saved you too. And together, we're going to save so many others through the work we do, the foundation we're building, the love we share. Amara's voice was thick with emotion when she spoke. Dominic Thorne, you taught me that sometimes the greatest strength isn't standing on your own. It's allowing someone to help you stand. You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, and that love doesn't diminish us but makes us capable of impossible things. She smiled through her tears. I came to your mansion to help you walk. Instead, you taught me how to fly. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. When the officiant finally said, You may kiss your bride, Dominic pulled Amara close and kissed her with all the love and gratitude and hope he felt. The applause was thunderous, but all he heard was her whispered, I love you. I love you too, he murmured back. My miracle worker. My partner. My wife. The reception was a blur of dancing, laughter, and speeches. Margaret gave a tearful toast about the woman who'd given her son back to her. Amara's mother spoke about the power of love that crosses oceans and cultures. Phillips made a joke about the most effective corporate recovery strategy being falling in love with your therapist. But the moment that mattered most came late in the evening, when Dominic and Amara slipped away from the celebration to the therapy room, now converted into a home gym, but still holding memories of their hardest battles. Do you remember the first time you made me try to stand? Dominic asked, pulling her into his arms for a slow dance even though no music played. You told me to leave like everyone else, Amara recalled, laughing softly. I was an idiot. You were scared. There's a difference. She rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Are you happy, Dominic? Truly happy. He thought about the question. About the company thriving under his leadership. About the research wing helping dozens of patients reclaim their mobility. About the foundation he and Amara had established to provide rehabilitation services to those who couldn't afford them. About the life they were building together, brick by brick, day by day. But mostly, he thought about the woman in his arms, the one who'd refused to let him stay broken, who'd risked everything to give him hope, who'd loved him at his lowest and celebrated him at his highest. I didn't know happiness like this existed, he said honestly. I thought I was happy before, with success, with money, with all the things I thought mattered. But this, he pulled back to look at her face. This is what it feels like to be truly alive. Amara's smile was radiant. Then let's stay alive together. for the next 60 years or so. At least, he agreed. They danced in the converted therapy room, in the space where they'd fought their hardest battles and won their greatest victories. Outside, the party continued without them. But in this moment, in this space that held their history, they were exactly where they belonged. Together, unbroken, in love, and ready to face whatever challenges came next, because they'd learned the most important lesson of all, that true strength isn't standing alone, but choosing the right person to stand beside. Dominic Thorne had lost everything in a car crash 4 months ago. But in losing everything, he'd found the one thing that actually mattered. Love. The end. Thank you for joining me on Dominic and Amara's journey. If this story touched your heart, drop a comment and let me know your favorite moment. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button, because there are so many more stories like this one waiting for you. Remember that limitations are just stories we tell ourselves. And every one of us has the power to write a better ending. Until next time, friends, keep believing in second chances, keep fighting for what matters, and keep loving fiercely.